The great chamber fell silent when Ambassador Ven rose from his seat. His pale skin seemed to glow under the blue lights of the Galactic Council Hall. 12 species had gathered here on Horizon Prime, the neutral station that floated between star systems. For 10,000 years, this council had kept peace among the stars. They had watched empires rise and fall. They had seen wars that burned entire worlds to ash. Nothing surprised them anymore. Until today, the Pale Collective has decided, Ven announced. His voice calm and cold like frozen metal. We will take the planet called Earth. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the chamber exploded into chaos. High Arbiter Ro, the oldest being in the room, slammed his ancient staff against the floor. The sound echoed like thunder. He had lived for 9,000 years. He had watched 17 civilizations destroy themselves. His body was bent and weak, but his mind was sharp as a blade. You cannot be serious, Ro said. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. Earth is a protected observation zone. The humans are a young species. They have not yet earned their place among the stars. This is against every law we have written. Ven smiled. It was not a warm smile. Laws are made by the strong, High Arbiter. The Pale Collective is strong. Earth sits at the meeting point of 3 hyperspace lanes. Its core is rich with rare minerals. We have calculated the value. It is worth breaking your laws. You would start a war over trade routes? Asked Counselor Dorn of the Stone Empire. He was a massive creature, built like a mountain, with skin like gray rock. The humans have done nothing to you. They do not need to do anything, Ven replied. They simply have what we want, and they are too weak to stop us from taking it. Counselor Marin of the Drift Union stood up slowly. She was tall and thin, with silver eyes that seemed to see through walls. Her people were scientists and watchers. They had studied humans for 200 years. Longer than anyone else. She had read their history. She had watched their wars. And she was afraid. Ambassador Ven, she said, keeping her voice steady. I must warn you. You do not understand what you are doing. Ven turned to look at her. The Drift Union has always been soft, Counselor. Your people watch and study while others act. What could you possibly know that our military experts do not? I know the humans, Marin said. I have spent my life studying them. They are not like any species we have ever seen. They are primitive, Ven interrupted. They have no shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light travel. They still burn dead plants for energy in some regions. They are children playing with rocks while we command the stars. Marin shook her head. You see only their technology. You do not see what lies beneath. She looked around the chamber at the other counselors. Their planet is a death world. Do you understand what that means? Their gravity is crushing. Their weather can kill in minutes. They have diseases that would destroy any of our species in days. They have predators with teeth and claws. And yet humans did not hide. They did not evolve to run away. They evolved to fight back. Every species fights, Ven said, waving his hand dismissively. Not like humans, Marin continued. They fight when they cannot win. They fight when they are dying. They fight for ideas, for feelings, for people they have never met. I have watched them throw themselves into fire to save strangers. I have watched them refuse to surrender when any logical being would accept defeat. She paused, her silver eyes meeting Ven's cold gaze. They are not primitive, Ambassador. They are something far more dangerous. They are unpredictable. The chamber was quiet now. Some of the counselors looked uncomfortable, but Ven only laughed. Fear, he said. That is what I hear. The Drift Union is afraid of creatures who cannot even leave their own star system. How sad. He turned to address the full council. The Pale Collective does not ask for permission. We inform you as a courtesy. Our fleet of 400 warships will arrive at Earth in 30 rotations. We will give them 1 day to surrender. When they refuse, because they are too stupid to understand their situation, we will pacify the planet. In 72 rotations, Earth will belong to us. High Arbiter Ro raised his staff again. If you do this, the collective stands alone. The council will not help you. We will not send ships or supplies. You will have no allies in this conquest. We need no allies, Ven replied. We need only our guns. The vote was called. One by one, the council members chose to remain neutral. They would not help the Pale Collective, but they would not stop them either. Earth was far away. Humans were unknown. It was easier to look away. When the session ended, Marin walked alone through the cold corridors of Horizon Prime. Her hearts were heavy with a feeling she could not name. She had tried to warn them. She had told them the truth. But they had not listened. She stopped at a viewing window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the empty space between galaxies, a small blue planet was spinning around its sun. The people on that planet were living their lives, raising their children, building their cities. They did not know what was coming, and when it came, Marin thought, the galaxy would learn what happened when you tried to destroy something that refused to die. She pressed her hand against the cold glass. I am sorry, she whispered to the distant stars. I am so sorry. But even as she spoke those words, another thought crossed her mind, a darker thought. What if she was not sorry for the humans? What if she was sorry for the Pale Collective? What if she was sorry for every species that would soon learn what humanity was capable of? In 30 rotations, the galaxy would discover the answer, and nothing would ever be the same again. The sky above Earth changed on a Tuesday morning. General Quan Day was drinking his third cup of coffee when the alarm started screaming. He was 62 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many wars. He had fought in 3 conflicts on Earth. He had buried friends. He had given orders that sent young soldiers to their deaths. But nothing had prepared him for the message that appeared on his screen. 400 ships had emerged from empty space near Jupiter. They were not human ships. Within the hour, every government on Earth had received the same transmission. It was translated into every language, broadcast on every frequency. The message was simple. Surrender your planet. You have one day. If you refuse, you will be destroyed. President Una Park stood in the emergency chamber beneath the mountains of Korea. She was 54 years old, with black hair turning gray at the edges and a face that rarely showed emotion. She had been a soldier before she was a politician. She understood war. Around her sat the leaders of every nation on Earth. Some were scared. Some were angry. Some were crying. The room smelled of fear and sweat. They are giving us a choice, said one leader, his voice shaking. Perhaps we should consider their offer. Perhaps surrender is the wise path. President Park looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the others. They are not giving us a choice, she said. Her voice was calm and clear. They are telling us to kneel, to give up our homes, our families, our future, to become slaves or cattle. She stood up slowly. I will not kneel. Korea will not kneel. And I believe, when the moment comes, humanity will not kneel either. The room was silent. Then, one by one, the leaders began to nod. General Quan Day received his orders that night. Prepare for war. Use everything we have. Hold nothing back. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, in a bunker that officially did not exist, a young physicist named Hana Lee was pulled from her bed by soldiers in black uniforms. She was 31 years old, brilliant and tired, with messy hair and glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She had spent the last 5 years working on experimental propulsion systems. She thought she was doing pure science. She was wrong. The soldiers led her through metal corridors to a massive underground chamber. Inside that chamber was something that made her stop breathing. A ship, but not a human ship. Something alien, half destroyed, covered in strange symbols. We found this in 2089, said a general whose name she was not told. It crashed in the Pacific Ocean. We have been studying it ever since, reverse engineering its technology, preparing for a day we hoped would never come. Hana walked closer to the wreckage. Her heart was pounding. You knew, she whispered. You knew they were out there. We suspected, the general replied. And now our suspicions have become reality. Dr. Lee, your country needs you. Your species needs you. We have weapons based on this technology, but they are incomplete. We need you to finish them. Hana looked at the alien ship. at the impossible curves of its metal, at the symbols that seemed to shift in the light. She thought about her parents, her brother, her students. She thought about all the people looking up at the sky right now, wondering if tomorrow would be their last day. "Show me everything," she said. On the surface, General Quan Day stood before a screen that showed the approaching fleet. 400 ships, each one larger than any vessel humanity had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, like a single organism with 400 bodies. His aide, a young captain named Ji-Wan, stood beside him. "Sir, what response should we send?" Quan Day thought about it for a long time. He thought about all the messages humanity could send: pleas for mercy, requests for negotiation, offers of resources. Then he thought about his grandfather, who had fought in a war long ago, who had told him stories about standing against impossible enemies, about choosing to fight even when victory seemed impossible. "One word," Quan Day said finally. "Sir, send them one word." He looked at the screen, at the ships that had come to destroy his world. No, the message was sent. Across Earth, billions of people watched their screens, waiting for a response. The alien fleet continued to approach. In factories that had been building cars and phones, machines began producing weapons. In universities that had been teaching students, scientists began calculating firing solutions. In homes where families had been eating dinner, parents began teaching their children where to hide. Humanity had one day to prepare for the end of the world. And they used every second. By the time the sun rose again, Earth had changed. The petty arguments between nations had been forgotten. The old hatreds had been set aside. For the first time in human history, every person on the planet was united by a single purpose: survival. General Quan Day looked at his command center, at the thousands of soldiers working through the night, at the weapons being moved into position, at the ships being launched from every coast. It was not enough. He knew it was not enough. The enemy had technology centuries ahead of them. The enemy had shields and plasma weapons and ships that could travel between stars. But Quan Day had something the enemy did not understand. He had humans. Creatures who had crawled out of the mud, survived ice ages and plagues and floods and fires, and built civilizations from nothing. Creatures who had never stopped fighting, never stopped growing, never stopped reaching for the stars. The alien fleet would arrive tomorrow. They expected a quick victory. They expected surrender or slaughter. They had no idea what was waiting for them. President Una Park appeared on every screen on Earth that night. Her face was calm. Her voice was steady. "They think we are weak," she said. "They think we will break. They have never met humanity. Tomorrow, we show them who we are. Tomorrow, we fight. Not for our governments, not for our flags, for our children, for our future, for Earth." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was hard as iron. "Let them come." The pale collective fleet entered Earth's orbit at exactly noon, Greenwich time. 400 warships arranged in perfect geometric patterns, their weapons charged, their shields glowing with blue light. Commander Ven stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue planet grow larger on his screen. "Begin the conquest," he ordered. The first wave of 30 ships descended toward the surface. They moved slowly, confidently. Their sensors showed no significant threats. A few primitive satellites, some crude rockets pointed at the sky, nothing that could scratch their shields. They were wrong. General Quan Day watched from his underground command center as the enemy ships entered the atmosphere. His finger hovered over a red button. Around him, thousands of soldiers held their breath. "Now," he said, Operation Iron Sky began. From every continent, missiles launched. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. Nuclear warheads, each one carrying the fire of a small sun, streaked toward the alien ships. At the same time, orbital platforms that had been disguised as weather satellites opened fire with railguns, sending metal projectiles at speeds that made them glow white-hot. The aliens activated their shields. The first missiles exploded against barriers of energy and did nothing. The aliens laughed at their screens. Primitive weapons, useless. Then the second wave hit. and the third, and the fourth. 50 missiles striking the exact same point on the exact same shield. 100 missiles. 200. The shields began to flicker. On the bridge of his flagship, Ven watched in disbelief as 3 of his ships exploded. Then 5 more. Then 10. The primitives were not trying to penetrate the shields with single strikes. They were overwhelming them with numbers, throwing so much firepower at single points that even the strongest barriers could not hold. Impossible, he whispered. In the first hour of the battle, the Pale Collective lost 30 ships. From hidden bases on the Moon and Mars, human vessels launched into space. They were ugly things, built in secret over decades, held together with welded metal and desperate hope, but they were fast. And they were armed with weapons that should not exist, weapons built from stolen alien technology, weapons that the enemy did not expect. Commander Tae-hyun led the first squadron. He was 35 years old, a pilot who had trained his entire life for a war he never thought would come. His ship was called the Shadow Fang. It could turn invisible to sensors for short periods. It could move through space like a whisper. Stay close, he told his pilots through the radio. Hit them fast. Hit them hard. Then disappear before they can shoot back. The squadron descended on the enemy fleet like wolves attacking a herd. They struck from angles the aliens did not expect, fired their weapons, and vanished before the return fire could find them. They did not fight in formations. They did not follow predictable patterns. They fought like chaos itself, each pilot making decisions in the moment, adapting to every change in the battle. The Pale Collective had conquered 47 worlds. On every world, the defenders had fought the same way. Organized lines, clear strategies, predictable responses, easy to counter, easy to defeat. Humans did not fight that way. On the surface of Earth, the ground war began. Pale Collective landing craft touched down in East Asia, expecting to find frightened civilians and weak resistance. Instead, they found Lieutenant Bora Jin. She was 28 years old, small and quiet, with a scar across her left cheek from a training accident. She had never wanted to be a soldier. She had wanted to be a teacher. But when the aliens came, she had picked up a rifle and walked to the front line. Now she crouched in the ruins of a city, watching alien soldiers march through the streets. They were tall and pale, with armor that glowed faintly. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Hold, she whispered to her soldiers through her radio. Let them come closer. The aliens walked past destroyed buildings, past burning cars, past bodies that lay still in the streets. They did not check the shadows. They did not expect ambushes from primitives. That was their mistake. Now, Bora said, from every window, every rooftop, every hole in the ground, humans opened fire. Bullets and rockets and homemade explosives tore through the alien formation. The enemy's personal shields flickered and died under the concentrated assault. Pale bodies fell to the ground. The survivors tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. The streets had been turned into traps. Buildings collapsed on their heads. Explosives buried under the ground, detonated beneath their feet. And through it all, the humans kept fighting, kept pushing, kept refusing to stop. One alien soldier, wounded and crawling through the rubble, looked up to see Bora Jin standing over him. Her face was covered in dust and blood. Her rifle was pointed at his head. Why? He managed to ask. Why do you not surrender? You cannot win. Bora looked at him for a long moment. She thought about her mother, who had died when the first bombs fell. She thought about her students, who were hiding in bunkers beneath the mountains. She thought about every human who had ever lived, who had fought and struggled and died so that their children could have a better life. You do not understand, she said quietly. We were never fighting to win. We were fighting because it is who we are. She pulled the trigger. On his flagship, Ambassador Ven stared at the reports flooding his screens. 100 ships lost. 200. His perfect fleet was being torn apart by creatures who should have been crushed in hours. How? He demanded. How is this possible? No one had an answer. In her laboratory on the moon, Hana Lee worked without sleep, her hands moving across alien technology, her mind burning with equations and possibilities. She was building something, Something that would change everything. The war was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began. In the great chamber of the Galactic Council, 12 species sat in horrified silence. Their screens showed live footage from Earth. They had expected to see a conquest. They had expected to see surrender and submission and the usual business of galactic expansion. Instead, they saw something that made their blood run cold. High Arbiter Rowe leaned forward in his ancient seat, his eyes fixed on a screen that showed a battlefield somewhere in Asia. Human soldiers were charging across open ground toward alien positions. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. Their bodies were breaking and bleeding, and they were singing. "What is that sound?" asked Counselor Dorn of the Stone Empire. His rocky face showed something that might have been fear. "Why are they making that sound while they die?" "It is called music," said Counselor Marin quietly. "Humans create patterns of sound that produce emotional responses. They use it to give themselves courage, to remind themselves why they fight." On the screen, a human soldier fell with a wound in his chest. Another soldier stopped, picked him up, and carried him toward safety while enemies fired at them from every direction. The carrier was hit twice. He kept walking. He did not stop until he had placed his friend behind cover. Then he picked up his weapon and went back to fight. "This is madness," Rowe whispered. Why would he risk his life for a single wounded soldier? The logical choice would be to leave him and preserve his own fighting ability. Marin shook her head slowly. "You are applying logic to beings who do not operate on logic alone. They operate on something else, something we have never truly understood." She paused. "They call it love." The screens changed to show the space battle. What remained of the Pale Collective Fleet was fighting desperately against human ships that should not exist. The aliens had superior technology. They had better weapons and stronger shields. But the humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They used their own damaged ships as missiles, crashing them into enemy vessels. They flew into impossible situations and somehow flew back out. They refused to retreat, refused to surrender, refused to die quietly. 180 ships, Counselor Dorn read from his report. The Pale Collective has lost 180 ships, nearly half their fleet, in 3 weeks. He looked up, his stone face cracking with disbelief. They were supposed to conquer that planet in 72 rotations. Reports continued to arrive. On the ground, the aliens had captured only 12% of Earth's surface. Every city had become a fortress. Every street had become a trap. Human civilians were building weapons in underground factories that worked day and night without stopping. Old people and children were carrying supplies to the front lines. Everyone was fighting. Everyone. "I have studied their history," Marin said, standing to address the council. Her silver eyes were bright with something between fear and wonder. "They have been at war with themselves for their entire existence. They have survived ice ages that covered their planet in frozen water. They have survived diseases that killed half their population. They have survived disasters that should have ended them 100 times over, and every single time, they came back stronger." She walked to the center of the chamber, her voice rising. "Their bodies are designed for survival. They heal faster than any species we have encountered. Their bones break and then grow back harder. Their minds are built for pattern recognition, for solving problems under pressure, for adapting to any situation. And most terrifying of all, they form bonds with each other that make them willing to sacrifice everything for strangers they have never met." High Arbiter Rowe stared at her. "You are saying they are designed for war?" "I am saying they are designed to survive," Marin replied. "War is simply one of the things they survive. They have been fighting since before they could walk upright. Every generation of humans has known conflict. It is written in their genes. It is burned into their souls." She paused. "We look at their planet and see a primitive world. They look at their planet and see a home they will die to protect. There is no force in this galaxy that can make them stop fighting. Because fighting is what they are." The chamber was silent. On the screens, the battle continued. Human soldiers fell and other humans took their places. Human ships were destroyed and other ships launched from hidden bases. There seemed to be no end to them, no limit to their willingness to bleed. Then a new transmission appeared on the main screen. A human face. A woman with black hair and eyes like iron. President Yuna Park. Members of the Galactic Council, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was fire beneath the calm. You are watching. We know you are watching. You have watched, since the beginning. You watched as the Pale Collective announced their intention to destroy us. You watched as they sent their fleet to our home. You did nothing. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I am not asking for your help. Park continued. We do not need it. We have already proven that we can fight. We will continue to fight until every invader is dead or driven from our sky. This message is not a plea. It is a warning. She leaned closer to the camera, and somehow it felt like she was looking at each counselor individually. Remember this day. Remember what you saw. Remember what you chose to do nothing about. Because when this war is over, when we have finished with the Pale Collective, we are coming for our place among the stars. We will build ships. We will explore your galaxy. We will meet your species. Her voice hardened. And you will never underestimate humanity again. The transmission ended. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Counselor Dorn rose heavily from his seat. I am recalling my ambassador from Pale Collective Space, he announced. The Stone Empire wants no connection to this invasion. One by one, other counselors made similar announcements. The Pale Collective was being abandoned. The galaxy was distancing itself from a war that had become a disaster. High Arbiter Row remained seated, staring at the empty screen where President Park's face had been. What have we done? He whispered to himself. What have we awakened? Marin heard him. She did not answer, because she knew the truth, that the rest of the council was only beginning to understand. They had not awakened anything. Humanity had always been awake, and now the galaxy would learn what that meant. 6 months after the invasion began, Dr. Hannah Lee finally slept. She had worked for 180 days without rest, living on coffee and determination, her mind burning with alien equations and impossible physics. She had taken the wreckage of a crashed ship and turned it into something new, something that would change everything. The ship was called the Vengeance. It was the first human vessel capable of traveling faster than light. It was armed with a gravity lance, a weapon that could tear enemy ships apart at the atomic level. It was ugly and brutal and held together with desperate hope. It was perfect. General Kwande stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars through the main window. Behind him, a crew of young soldiers worked at their stations. They were tired. They were wounded. They had lost friends and family and everything they once knew. But they were still fighting. The Pale Collective fleet has retreated to high orbit, reported Captain G1. They have 112 ships remaining. They are preparing for a final assault. Kwande nodded slowly. The enemy had lost nearly 300 ships. 300 vessels destroyed by a species that had never before traveled beyond its own moon. The aliens had expected victory in days. Instead, they had found 6 months of blood and fire and endless human resistance. Now was time to end it. Launch all remaining ships, Kwande ordered. Tell Commander Taehyun to lead the assault. We will follow in the Vengeance. Across Earth's orbit, human vessels emerged from hidden positions. They were a strange fleet. Old military ships, converted cargo haulers, mining vessels armed with improvised weapons. Nothing matched. Nothing was elegant, but every ship was crewed by humans who had chosen to fight rather than die on their knees. Commander Taehyun led his squadron toward the enemy flagship. His ship, the Shadow Fang, had been repaired so many times that almost nothing remained of the original vessel. He had lost half his pilots over the past 6 months. He had watched friends burn in the cold darkness of space, but he was still flying. All units, he said into his radio. This is the final push. No retreat. No surrender. 100 voices answered him. For Earth, the battle began. The Pale Collective fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts and energy beams filled the darkness between ships. Human vessels exploded. Alien vessels exploded. The void of space became a graveyard of burning metal and frozen bodies. Taehyun's squadron punched through the enemy formation, heading straight for the flagship. His pilots flew like demons, dodging fire that should have killed them, finding gaps in defenses that should have been impenetrable. They lost ships. They lost friends. They kept flying, The Shadowfang reached the enemy flagship and fired its last missile directly into the hull. The explosion tore a hole in the alien ship's side. Taehyun flew through the gap. Inside the flagship, alarms screamed and lights flickered. Ambassador Ven stood on his bridge, watching his empire crumble around him. He had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. He had found a nightmare. The door to his bridge exploded inward. Taehyun walked through the smoke. His armor cracked and his face bloody. Behind him came a squad of human soldiers. They were wounded. They were exhausted. They were not stopping. Ven turned to face them. His pale face showed something that might have been confusion. Might have been fear. "You should not be here," he said. "You should not be able to do any of this. You are primitives. You are insects. How is this possible?" Taehyun walked closer. His legs were shaking with exhaustion, but his eyes were steady. "You want to know how?" he said. "I will tell you." He stopped directly in front of the alien ambassador. They were almost the same height. But there was something in Taehyun's eyes that made Ven step backward. "We have been fighting since before we could walk upright," Taehyun said. "We fought ice ages that should have killed us. We fought plagues that burned through our cities. We fought each other, over and over, for thousands of years. We are children of a death world, Ambassador. We were born in fire and blood and struggle, and we are still here." He grabbed Ven by the collar of his uniform. "You came to our home. You tried to take our planet. You killed our people. And you thought we would break." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "We do not break. We never break. You are just the latest thing that tried to kill us, and like everything else, you failed." Outside the flagship, the Vengeance arrived. General Kwande watched through the main window as Hana Lee activated the gravity lance for the first time. A beam of twisted light shot from the ship's bow and struck an enemy cruiser. The cruiser did not explode. It simply came apart, its atoms separating from each other, its hull dissolving into dust that scattered across the stars. The remaining Pale Collective ships tried to run. They did not get far. When it was over, Ven was in chains, and his fleet was nothing but debris floating in Earth's orbit. The war that was supposed to last 72 rotations had lasted 6 months. The conquest that was supposed to be easy had become a catastrophe. Humanity had won. 3 days later, the Galactic Council sent a message. They offered Earth full membership. They offered technology and trade, and a seat at the table that governed the stars. President Yuna Park read the offer in her office. Then she recorded her response. "Thank you for your offer," she said, her voice calm and cold. "We decline. We do not want a seat at your table. We watched your table sit silent while our people died. We will build our own table, and when we are ready, we will decide who is worthy of sitting with us." She ended the transmission, but there was one more message. A private communication to Counselor Marin of the Drift Union, the only being who had spoken against the invasion. "You tried to warn them," President Park said. "You tried to help us. Humanity does not forget its friends. When we reach the stars, we will remember who stood with us." On Horizon Prime, Marin received the message. She read it 3 times. Then she smiled. 1 year later, the Vengeance led a fleet of human ships into deep space. General Kwande stood on the bridge, looking at the stars that were now within humanity's reach. Behind him, Hana Lee was already working on plans for newer, faster, stronger ships. The galaxy had wanted to meet humanity. Now they had, and across 1,000 worlds, a new phrase began to spread. A warning passed from species to species, from planet to planet, from the edge of known space to its center. "Do not wake the humans.